Stereotypes of Native Americans have been pervasive in mainstream America. Racist symbols are still used today, some subtle and some more blatant. These can undermine our goals and add to our struggle to maintain our culture while succeeding in society. We each have to take every opportunity to teach the world that there are many different cultures within Indian country. Individual customs and goals are not the same for each tribe. Tulalip's future depends on educating not just our children, but also our local and national neighbors that preserving our Coast Salish customs benefits everyone. Today we talk to guests Theresa Sheldon, Chelsea Craig, and Mary Jane Topash. All three use their jobs to work toward eliminating stereotypes. Welcome to Hibulb Conversations. I'm Mytyl Hernandez. Today we're going to be talking about stereotypes in Indian country. We're here with Theresa Sheldon, who is a member of our board of directors. Hi, Theresa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Over the years, there has been a persistent use of stereotypes, especially when it comes to Native Americans. There is a tendency not to take into consideration that there are over 500 tribes, each with our own customs and history. As a representative of Tulalip, do you find this to be the case?
Absolutely. I would say my number one job is educating people on who we are and what we are as Tulalip tribal citizens.
What are some of the stereotypical remarks you have heard over the years?
They absolutely range. I mean, you have your Washington, D.C. team, and a lot of it is just they don't understand the difference between who we are, that there's coastal, there's plains, there's plateaus, all the different kinds of different backgrounds that we have as Native Americans.
How about more recently? Do you find it to be any more subtle?
The subtleness, I think, is one of the worst. And with this new administration, you're seeing a lot more of it. You're seeing a lot more ignorance being spoken out. You see a lot more people who just do not have the facts correct. And so they're afraid. I think the fear in not knowing, people assume things. And instead of Googling or researching to find out the truth about people, they just continue to say what they've heard, and it's not helpful, and it's actually really hurtful.
Right.
And so I would say there's an increase of that more recently, yes.
Washington State passed Bill 5433 in 2015. It requires all schools to teach local tribal history, governance, and current affairs. Did Tulalip have a role in that?
Yeah, thankfully Senator McCoy, John McCoy, who's a Tulalip citizen, helped lead the charge on that, and he also had a great team that worked here to create and work on the curriculum together.
Have you seen any changes in perception of our Coast Salish people since the teaching of our history has been introduced?
Yeah, the increase of people wanting to be educated and has definitely increased. And so as a board member, I'm constantly asked to come speak or asked for information. And thankfully the Hibulb provides different information that we can send to different grade levels, because there's your kindergarten to fifth grade to high schoolers who really want current Tulalip history and to understand our culture and understand who we are as a people.
Yep. Our schools here in Tulalip have been teaching Tulalip tribal history for several years, as you know. Now that it is being taught throughout Snohomish County, do you think attitudes are changing towards the Tulalip people?
That's definitely the hope, and I think it will continue to increase because when you understand people, then you're not afraid of them.
And what can we do to make others more aware of our culture and how we differ from, say, tribes east of the Cascades?
I think the biggest thing that any citizen can do is demand true history be taught. And it's a disservice to every United States citizen that they are not learning the correct history of America. And that history begins with the indigenous people. And so if you're never having the opportunity to learn and be educated on who those original people are of this lands, you're missing out on the entire foundation of our country. And how sad is it that students will go their entire K through 12 and not have that ability to learn the correct history of America? and then they're ignorant adults and don't know. And that's absolutely not good for anyone.
Right.
And
it's
so,
a vicious cycle.
Very much so. And when you're left to Google facts and history, and you're like, what? How was I not taught this? And then you're upset at the school system because you're upset because why are you not teaching me the correct history in school?
Right. What is the Tulip government doing to help reduce the use of stereotypes?
So Tulalip has actually been really involved in the Marysville School District. They've worked with the OSPI on the since time immemorial curriculum, constantly about educating. And the biggest thing is being able to tell people why it's unacceptable and why you don't do it. Because so many people, they're like, oh, it's not a big deal, it's not hurtful. And there's been so many studies that prove, Stanford has shown, Harvard has shown the negative impacts of stereotypes, and specifically on Native American children. And so people constantly say, well, I know a Native, I asked them and they're okay with it.
Right.
This still doesn't mean you use racial slurs and negative stereotypes because your one friend said it was okay. And so if you ever feel like you're in that place of saying my one friend said it's okay, it's probably not. And you should probably not do it.
What advice do you have for anyone that encounters someone who's either knowingly or unknowingly using these stereotypes?
I think there's a lot of people who unknowingly do it. They just are not conscious about it. They haven't been educated and they haven't thought about it a lot of the times. And you'll see it in so many different cultures too, because in Chinese culture and Japanese culture, you'll see people use their traditional art and their traditional stories as a fancy Hollywood thing and not thinking there's anything wrong with it. The biggest time it's probably talked about is at Halloween, because that's when people wear Pocahontas. That's when people go out and wear the different absolutely inappropriate costumes, and they think nothing of it. And so the biggest thing you can do is stop someone and say, hey, did you know that's offensive? Did you know that's racial? Do you know that that is a negative thing to do to people? And a lot of the times, because I will stop people and I will ask them, especially if they're wearing a headdress, especially if they're wearing feathers and doing anything that is our sacred objects, and they're making fun of it and doing that for amusement. And it's just acknowledging that that's not okay, that it is offensive, and then it's up to them. Do they want to continue that negative stereotype, or do they want to say, I'm sorry, I never thought about it before and I won't do it again.
What would your hope be for the future of reducing and eliminating stereotypes amongst Coast Salish people?
My absolute dream would that we would understand the true history of who we are. And so understanding the history of Coast Salish people, understanding the history of Tulalip, understanding the difference between being Coast Salish and being a plateau tribe like Colville, and understanding the differences, even though Washington State has 29 tribes, yet we're all very different. Right. We're all very unique. We all have sacred things that are very private to us, and that we're not okay with exploiting those. And so whenever you have fashion and you have fancy industry, they like to exploit cultural tradition. And it's not just Native Americans, it's throughout the entire world. And you as a consumer, it's up to you and say, do I want to continue that exploitation, or do I want to know better and not do that?
Theresa, is there anything you'd like to add?
I would just really like us to focus on correcting the history books. And I think the Senate bill that addresses it, but also if we really went after textbooks and said, stop printing incorrect history, and said from here on out, 2017 of February, we are no longer going to print incorrect history. We're going to start the Washington State history book with the indigenous people of this lands. And we'll say, since time has always been, they have always been here. And it's acknowledging their presence and that they're still here. Because history books speak about us in past tense, not in present. And we're alive and we're flourishing and we're doing amazingly well. The other thing I would ask is that people just educate themselves. And so checking your own privilege and checking your own knowledge, I think, is really important in today, and being able to not be hurtful and not doing that. And it's not about political correctness. It's about being a decent human being.
Right.
And so I think that would help out our world so much, so much.
I agree. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Theresa.
Thank you.
I'm Mytyl Hernandez, and we'll be right back with more Hibulb Conversations. Welcome back to Hibulb Conversations. We're here with Chelsea Craig, who's the Cultural Specialist for Quilceda Tulalip Elementary. Welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you.
As the Cultural Specialist, where are you based, and can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
I work at Quilceda Tulalip Elementary, and my job is very unique. I start the day with a whole school assembly, and our kids sing a traditional song, so I oversee that work and make sure that they're being respectful. And then I work really hard to get our culture and traditions taught in the classroom.
Well, that's wonderful. How long have the schools here in Tulalip been teaching history as part of the curriculum?
I think in order to really give it justice, we need to go back to when Harriet Shelton Dover did work in Tulalip Elementary, and really working since then. And we're just working to keep that work going on and getting it more in every classroom.
That's wonderful. Washington State Bill 5433 was passed in 2015, and it requires all Washington State schools to teach tribal history, governance, and current affairs. Has that changed the curriculum here in Tulalip?
I think that it has definitely got us more organized. There's a excellent curriculum online for all teachers to have access to. And what's exciting is we're seeing more expand throughout all the schools in Marysville.
That's amazing. Are you finding there's a general acceptance for teaching the Coast Salish culture in local schools outside of Tulalip?
I think that there's definitely a acceptance and demand for it. In a time like now that we face in the world, our teachers are really actively wanting to do what's right and teach our kids justice and standing up for what's right for people.
Are students learning about other Coast Salish tribes and their different customs?
Definitely. We have lots of different units in the sovereignty curriculum, including learning about Celilo Falls. So yes, definitely.
And does that extend into like Midwest and Southwest tribes as well?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is the teaching more from a historical perspective, or does it focus more on current affairs?
I would say definitely both. Okay. We need to go back and understand where we came from to really see and appreciate where we are now.
And the issue of stereotyping, how is that being addressed in the school curriculum today?
Well, I think by having a well balance of history and current culture, we work really hard to teach what's appropriate. And the sovereignty curriculum is a place that our teachers know that's a reliable source because it's been recognized by all the tribes in Washington State.
Do you see improvements in the way this issue is being addressed?
I think just the fact that we're on the table.
Yeah.
I mean, just the fact that teachers are willing to bring this into our history classes when in our time, most likely it was glamorized or skipped over.
Mm-hmm. Going back to STI, where do you see the program going in the next 5 years?
Well, my hope is that Tulalip Tribes will have its own curriculum written that schools across the state could access, including a textbook and videos, and that it's just living in classrooms.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
Well, I think that in order to really understand and appreciate where we are in education today, we have to acknowledge our ancestors. And my great-grandmother was a survivor of the Tulalip boarding school, and I work every day to heal her history and my history by empowering our students to be proud of who they are.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Why do you think it's important for our children to learn the history and culture of our tribe?
I think that it's vitally important because through unspoken words, passed down from one generation to another. We carry a lot of pain from surviving the boarding school era, from surviving all the eras that the United States government wanted to stop us from being Indian, and we never did stop. And we have to fight every day to teach our kids to keep going on and being proud of who they are, because the world is not always easy walking the world of being Native. And so we need to teach them to keep their head held high, because they won't always have that encouragement that they may have, let's say, at an elementary school.
It is. It's such important work. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being here with us today, Chelsea.
Thanks.
We'll be right back with more Hibulb Conversations. Welcome back to Hibulb Conversations. We're here with Mary Jane Topash. Welcome to the show, Mary Jane.
Thank you.
As the group tour specialist at the Hibulb Cultural Center, you talk to visitors from all over. Do you find some people still use stereotypes when asking questions?
Yeah, I've encountered a few stereotypical questions from visitors that range from anything from like what we're wearing or even if Native Americans are at the museum when they're talking to one.
Are they surprised that our customs and traditions are very different from those of Midwest or Southwest tribes?
I would say not every patron who comes in has that that vision, but I have encountered a few that are looking for certain things that we don't have, and I'll get asked questions about that, whether it's teepees or where we live and things like that.
Can you tell us some more questions that you get asked?
Sure. So I've been asked if people work, where do people live, if we still gather traditionally, and sometimes I get asked if we pay taxes, things like that.
Now, when you encounter these types of stereotypical questions, how do you correct somebody without offending them?
Usually, sometimes I'll say, well, I can see why you would think that, and then I'll try to counter it with something that's a little bit more accurate or more true to this region, but like in a respectful way. Try not to tell them that they're wrong or addressing it, but I'll try to change it into a way that makes more sense. Or
just give them the information that's accurate.
Correct.
Do you find that younger people are more aware of traditions than their elders?
Yeah, to a degree. A lot of my job works with elementary kids, so a lot of them are actively learning about some of the material when they come in, so they do know a few differences, or it appears that they know a little bit more than, say, their parents or their grandparents.
Do you think that the mandate of the Washington State history curriculum has increased people's education levels?
I know the curriculum is still kind of young, so it's hard to gauge it right now, but from what I've encountered, it feels that way, that there's starting to be a little bit of a shift in understanding that, Coast Salish versus, say, Plains or the Southwest, there is starting to become a distinction between there, which is nice to see.
As well as working, you are attending school and getting your master's degree.
Yes.
Want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I'm currently actually just about to wrap up a 2-year program at the University of Washington in Bothell, earning a Master of Arts in Cultural Studies. So I look at studying other cultures and sort of the discourses that surround those. And so that's kind of what cultural studies is about.
And what is the goal of your dissertation?
So at the end result of this program, we have to create a project, and my project is actually talking about what we're talking about today, which is stereotypes. So my project is hopefully to address stereotypes of Native Americans and sort of correct that and kind of acknowledge the discourse that's around that.
What type of things are we doing at the Hibulb Cultural Center to counter those stereotypes in Tulalip?
So here at Hibulb, we try to provide the most accurate and true representation of ourselves, which is Coast Salish people, which is the Tulalip tribes. So by our center here, we're really working on providing the correct narrative. We're showing how we, who we are as a people, and so that's one way that, and by doing that in itself is kind of combating these stereotypes, because we're just being us. Mm-hmm. We're not fitting in this normal image that you usually see.
How do you think we could do better as individuals moving forward?
As individuals, I would say just really checking yourself and asking, are you making assumptions? Are these preconceived notions that you don't realize you have? We can always try to, I guess, really understand or try and ask I don't want to say the right questions, mm-hmm. but sort of the more appropriate questions.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would just like to add, if people are unsure about something, to either ask or take it upon yourself to research something about your own area. And stereotypes can be very harmful to people, so it's hard to combat that when you don't realize you're doing that. Mm-hmm. So I'd just like to ask people to really think about things that they probably don't even realize that they're doing, and to just sort of educate themselves.
Well, thank you for being here today and talking with us about stereotypes. We wish you the best of luck in your studies, and we look forward to celebrating when you graduate.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah. Hopefully in the coming years, through more education, we can continue to combat stereotypes throughout Indian country. I'm Mytyl Hernandez. Thank you for watching Hibulb Conversations.